short preface to the book that you will soon be listening to. This book has been in the making for many years. As a matter of fact, most of the composition was done around 2002, but I have added to and I have improved, taken away, and continued to improve it. At the time of the writing of the book, I was 65 years of age. Of course, now I'm 80 years of age. And so you will see in the book some statements regarding age and simply just disregard that because a lot of time has passed since then. There's nothing about this book other than to share my struggle of making a separation from a church, a wonderful church, and my life in ministry has been nothing but pleasant. Well, I have to be quite honest, not always pleasant, but for the most part, an wonderful experience, and I would certainly be doing it today and would do it all over again if given the opportunity. But I simply wanted to give this preface to the book so that you would know that this is a process that's been in the making for a long time. And of course, it will be lived out in the book as I make a journey on the Appalachian Trail. But in that process, many lessons have been learned, and I want to leave these as a legacy for my family, but also for others who might be interested in that journey. So thank you for listening, and I hope it will be something that will be perhaps useful and at least entertaining for you. Thank you so very much.
Take a hike, a walk on the trail. Most men live lives of quiet desperation. The following process came to me when thinking about authoring a book or a sermon. The process can be likened to building a fire. There's the time spent gathering wood, tinder, and matches. After everything is in place, the match is struck and the fire is set. While the fire continues to burn, it is necessary to add wood to the fire. The keeper of the fire must stoke the fire and tend to it by moving the wood so that it may burn. The fire must be watched and managed for as long as desired. There must also be a process for ensuring the fire is out, tended to, and managed so that it will not damage anything else. I think about the fire set in another's life, especially children. When a child is given credit for making a statement, good or bad, within the family, it will light a fire in him. Did I say that? When I first proposed authoring this story about my journey, I told Willie that it is a story that is both personal and professional. Then she reflected momentarily, saying it was an individual, experienced, and pitiful story. It may seem strange, even suspicious, that a pastor, after 36 years, would resign from his church to take on the challenge of walking the Appalachian Trail that he has never set foot on except in his mind. Well, as foolish as that seems, that's precisely what I did. As I began the walk, I had no idea it would take such a precarious and circuitous route. I hiked my heart out. In a reflective moment, I recommend it to all needing renewal. It's much more fun than a breakdown, I'm told. Chapter 1, when it's time to go and you are on a path that says dead end. Introduction. When is it time to go? That is the question that most pastors ask themselves about moving to a new congregation or some other type of ministry during their careers. Denominations vary in how a pastor moves from one congregation to another. Baptists select their pastors in many ways for different tenures. Most churches select a pastor for an indefinite time. The contract provides escape clauses for the pastor or the church to separate from the other when it's time to go. How does a pastor know when it's time to go? It might be a gentle nudge when he discovers that the lock on the study door has been changed, or when his name has been removed from the church sign. It's not a good sign when he discovers a guest speaker he didn't invite. It's always an eye opener when the deacon of the week prays for the pastor search committee. He could interpret the vote on whether to pray for him to get well by deacons during a siege of sickness as questionable. A sure indication that it is time to go is the deacon chairperson's slip of the tongue as he introduces you as his former pastor. All these scenarios are tongue in cheek, but there are real signs and indicators that every pastor must be alert to as he walks through the minefield of serving a congregation as a pastor. Even though a pastor is tuned to all the indicators that his time to go is nearing, it doesn't mean he can find a place to go. A Baptist pastor relies upon his contacts to recommend him to other churches and places. We primarily count on the networking of pastors. With the political and theological issues that have brought division and paranoia among most Southern Baptist pastors, even this method has been undermined for many of us. When all those doors remain closed and there is no opportunity for him to move, what is he to do when it's time to go? For a pastor to continue serving a congregation when he has done his best to move forward, but no church or anyone else offers him a job, is not in the best interest of the pastor or the church. Even though I came to the end of a pleasant 15 years with McDonough Road Baptist Church, there were issues in the church with individuals that made it difficult for me to serve the congregation. I gave my resume to individuals and churches months before I resigned, but no one offered me a job. For every pastor who has been in this position, it is a blow to the ego when no one gives them a job. When you know that some churches need a pastor you can serve, the call never comes to you. Then I began to evaluate the reality that I had been a pastor since I was 18 without a real break. I concluded that now would be an enjoyable time for me to take some time to do something I had dreamed of doing. It was a way to say goodbye to my present church without admitting that I was a has-been, because I got no offers for another pastorate, even though both medium and small churches had considered me. I must admit that this was a blow to my ego. I was at 54, well trained, in good health, at my prime, but I was not offered an opportunity to practice my profession in a place I felt was the best setting. You might ask the question, then why not stay where you are? Things were good, and your congregation on a larger scale was very approving of your work. Why rock the boat? I had to admit that my attitude had changed toward my work, and to be honest with myself and the church, I should move forward with my life even though there was nowhere to practice my trade. I felt for several reasons that I had to go. First, there were issues with individuals that resulted from misunderstandings. Nothing significant, but I didn't have the energy or the desire to give any attention to defend myself or explain myself. The issues were simple issues of leadership that some misinterpreted and I thought to be petty. Secondly, I had been through 15 years of being treated as well as any pastor could hope for. I've prayed through the years that every pastor could serve the kind of pastorate I enjoyed at Second Baptist in McDonough Road. We were at our prime. The church was poised to grow and minister strategically in Fayette County, Georgia. My feelings regarding how my leadership was being misunderstood and challenged by individuals carried me down a road that I believed would bring about self-destruction. I was ineffective as the leader among a few of the folks there. So I decided to take an appropriate and acceptable route. I would choose my next adventure in life and say goodbye because I felt it was time for me to go. I thought that I had done my best in the leadership of this great bunch of folks rather than allow how I felt about them or how they felt about me to deteriorate. I chose to say goodbye before it was forced on me either by conscience or committee. Thirdly, even though I thought it was time to go, there were no opportunities for another pastorate or ministry position. Many pastors reach that position just as I did, but must hold on to their jobs for financial reasons. Often, this course is self-defeating for the pastor and usually results in self-destruction. Too many stories of pastors who have done noble work but self-destruct because they have no opportunities to continue. If I had not said goodbye to my congregation when I did, it would have been a denial on my part that it was time to go. When a pastor ignores the warning signs that it is time for him to go, things deteriorate on the pastor's part, perhaps a few individuals. This deterioration widens, often including others in the church. Some battles and skirmishes break out unrelated to the central issue of the pastor, knowing that within his heart he knows it is time for him to go. I think many signs, even warning signs, come to both the pastor and the congregation when it is time for the pastor to go. It makes it so much easier, but confusing when the pastor recognizes these signs and then separates them on sensible terms from the congregation. Whenever the pastor or the people fail to see and admit when it is time for the pastor to go, many innocent people are often injured. It becomes confusing for everyone. Those excellent members of my former church would argue that my work was not done. At the same time, some other loyal friends and supporters would never have hurt my feelings by saying it was good for me to move forward. There's got to be a mature way for a pastor and the people to deal with the issue of when it's time to go. Would it have massaged my ego if more folks had begged me to stay? Most people don't understand how difficult it is for a pastor to separate from a church. Even though I was happy serving my congregation, I felt it was time to go. Being happy in one's work and knowing it is time for him to move forward are opposing feelings. Add to that mix the fact that there are no jobs to go to, it is more confusing. Also, a pastor knows that those in the congregation will be sad, others glad, and others primarily confused. Many mixed signals erupt when a pastor is effective, appreciated, and at his prime resigns from a church. At best, those feelings prevail when a pastor is called to another ministry or church, but when he reveals that he is doing something for himself as mundane as walking on the Appalachian Trail, that too is questionable. The congregation feels rejected, abandoned, and sometimes mistreated, so it's evident that many feelings are up in the air. And what is a church to do? What is the pastor to do? He's hurting, but there are very few avenues that he can take for his nurturing, and the church that he has loved for so long is hurting, but for the first time in all those years, he has disqualified himself from caring for them. He has caused much of the hurt because of his selfishness in doing something he wanted. Aren't preachers called and committed for a lifetime? Doesn't God provide for those he has chosen? Why didn't an opportunity open? Why is it so difficult for a pastor to admit publicly that all avenues for ministries are closed? I'm reading myself, I'm reading the church, I'm reading my opportunities, and in my best understanding of God's will and purpose, I believe it is time for me to go. The begging question is, where? This is when many pastors return to school. I didn't want any more formal schooling. I could have used more formal education, but I didn't want to return to school. However, I paid tuition in the school of experience and hard knocks daily. Some take on another career, others change denominations. Many routes are taken when it's time to go, but there is nowhere to go. I chose the adventure of walking on the Appalachian Trail. I decided to move forward even though there was no place to go. I chose how I would separate from the church. No one forced me or chose how that would be done for me. That felt right and good for me. Reflecting on that decision, I see it feels suitable for all involved. Sometimes a pastor destroys someone else to maintain a place for himself. I could have quickly taken that path, which would have been the low road. A pastor can self destruct or destroy many innocent people when he knows it is time to go, but there is no place to go. Often the congregation doesn't know what is taking place. I felt it was better for me to read the Times, knowing from the signs that it was time for me to go, so I chose to go on a trip, an adventure, rather than a trip like Jonah to Joppa, away from God, or like Elijah into depression. So, as I look back on the beginnings of my journey, it all looks fine except for the things I didn't consider long enough. If I had done that, I wouldn't be writing this now. I wouldn't change a thing. The things I've done since resigning from McDonough Road Baptist Church have contributed to the kingdom of God, enriched my life, and will continue to be decisions I recommend to many pastors. It is something that a pastor must plan for in his mid years to make these kinds of choices that will give him further usefulness in the kingdom of God. This will provide me with longevity. Even at my age now, 65, I believe that I have much to offer. I know what I have done and can do. Even during the youth culture, there's a place for those of us who are mature preachers. There are very few professions like ministry. At an early age in ministry, I was reminded more than once that churches need maturity. Now that I have maturity, I'm told that churches need youth. Ministry is one of the professions that requires well-trained professionals to retire at an early age because there is a desire for youth. An epilogue to the various walks that I made. The fact is that I got my pilot's license a week before the trial. Then I was disappointed and embarrassed that I had not walked the trail well. How does one deal with public embarrassment? That seems so nebulous to you, but it was big for me. How do I explain that I'm back home because I've whipped out on the trail? I did have legitimate knee problems, but others overcame them when I didn't. I must admit that the more pressing thing was the heart problems. Being away from my sweetheart, living with a broken heart, the separation from the church, and dealing with an unresolved, confused heart. I have a heart for the work, but when I needed an open door for another job, there was none. How am I to interpret that? Should I even raise the issue? It sounds like I'm whining. When our daughter Jody told her friends that I resigned from my church to walk the trail, they were surprised. Later, one of her friends asked, "Are you mother and daddy having marital problems?" Jody said, "No more than usual." "No," she said, "they are not having marital problems. I'm sure there are always those folks waiting for the second shoe to drop or other revealing things that give the real reason a person does what they do. Only after these years have passed can I talk about these feelings. I grieved. It was my choice. There was a period of separation and grief that I will not and cannot deny. I can go back to other life experiences and times when I've shot myself in the foot, leaving the church and being confused. One of the worst things we do to each other at pastors' conferences is cannibalize each other. We measure one another's significance or importance as a pastor. Recently, a friend said, "There are no big churches or small churches. All churches are important." He also said, "God is where you don't go." I've always enjoyed a group that dealt honestly with one another, a chapter expressing the importance of having accountability groups. Paring that down, every individual is essential. One can take on a few people into their life as friends or confidants. Being with a group of people with honest and open relationships is critical. Many ministers never achieve this in their professional lives. Dealing with being misunderstood as a pastor is a good topic. That may be the trickiest thing to deal with, as rejection is difficult for a pastor to accept. Knowing that you have been sincere in a movement or effort, being misunderstood is not easy to accept or deal with. I resigned the pastorate of First Baptist Church, Pass Christian, Mississippi, as an example of doing the right thing incorrectly. I did the thing the wrong way. To admit failure and embarrassment due to your actions is not fashionable. How do you know when it's time to go? How do you deal with it when there's nowhere to go? How do you deal with the feelings when it is time to go? And when it's time to go, you deal with separation from a church just as you do with the other times when you separate from your family, when the children go to school, to camp, to college, and when they move off to a job or when they marry. These feelings and issues must be addressed, but it is awkward when a pastor leaves. You don't know where to offer congratulations or condolences. In chapter 2, I share the sermon that I preached as I resigned. Following this sermon, I preached other sermons to further explain, attempting to teach others about knowing and doing the will of God.